Hi everyone, my name is Carolina Oviedo, and in this presentation I'll be discussing my algebraic thinking task implementation and reflection for Module 6. I work with two Algebra 1 students, one from a regular 9th grade class and one from a 10th grade retester group. The task I used was the growing squares with toothpicks pattern task, which is designed to develop algebraic habits of mind and support students in generalizing patterns. Purpose. This task helps students move from concrete presentations towards abstract reasoning. It requires them to count accurately, recognize structure, organize numerical patterns, and eventually verbalize or symbolically express a general rule. It's also a great tool for eliciting student thinking as described by researchers like Callahan, Skies, and Ginsberg. Now, some of the anticipated misconceptions are before implementing the task, I solved it myself and predicted several misconceptions. For example, many students will assume each new square adds four toothpicks instead of three. Students often miscount overlapping edges or treat each square as separate. I also expected some difficulty transitioning between the drawing, the tables, and the rules. Students may confuse recursive with explicit reasoning. Now, let's talk about the findings. Student 1 findings. My ninth grade student relied heavily on visuals. They drew every figure and initially counted incorrectly because they did not identify shared size. Through a lot of guided questioning, they were able to adjust their count, understand the pattern's growth, and develop a rule with support. This student demonstrated emerging conceptual understanding but needed prompting to generalize. Now, when it comes to student 2, my 10th grade retester approached the task using a table first. Although they misinterpreted the pattern as growing by 4, they corrected it after drawing and identified shared edges. They verified the rule, corrected errors independently, and showed stronger procedure and strategic reasoning. Now, some of the habits of mind observed were that both students demonstrated noticing the structure, generalizing into rules, they represented with diagrams, tables, and expressions, and they were able to justify using examples, which is what they observed based on their drawings. Now, some of the misconceptions identified, like I mentioned, they did assume four new toothpicks each time. They forgot the sharp edges, and they were having some difficulties transitioning from visual to rules. So it did take a lot of guiding process, but they were still able to control their information and kind of concise it into a table and a rule. Now, the rubric ratings. Using the mathematics understanding rubric, I rated student 1 as developing and student 2 as approaching proficient. This was based on their procedural fluency, conceptual understanding, and strategic competency as demonstrated throughout the task. If I were to teach this in class, I would focus on helping students analyze the structure of growing patterns using manipulatives or color-coded diagrams. I'd also emphasize transitioning across representations and provide more explicit opportunities for justification and explanation. If if I were to use this in the class, I think students will work in pairs. Each pair will record drawings, tables, and rules, use stamps for my emerging bilingual students, and make it more like an exploration set before we actually elaborate into rules, patterns, and recognitions of functions. In conclusion, this task gave me strong insight into how my students perceive structure, develop rules, and justify mathematical relationships. These insights directly inform my instructional next steps and support the development of deeper algebraic thinking. Thank you for watching.